Hello traders, it's Victor from TradePro Academy, and welcome to our channel where we specialize in trading derivatives. In front of me, you guys can probably see this is a screen of Sierra charts. So today we are going to be breaking down a very important indicator, if you will, in the futures market. What I'm going to be talking to you guys about today is going to be volume delta. Now, volume delta is a great tool to find a lot of different things in the market, right? Like trap traders, bottoms, tops, the extension of moves, and even more. So in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down a quick intro to volume delta and some of the key tools that I like to use, exposing you to things that you might have not seen before. So let's jump right into this intro, but first I want you guys to smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, and drop a comment down below. What else would you like to see out of our videos? And we're going to dive into this intro and run through this video. So in front of me on the screen here, you can see a multitude of different charts, right? What we're going to be focusing on is a few specifics, and I'll show you guys on the screen and break those down. But first and foremost, what is delta, right? What is delta? Delta is ask volume minus bid volume, meaning market buyers minus market sellers, to give you a net form of net buyers versus net sellers at either key levels or key time periods in the market. So what this suggests is you can take the volume at specific levels or at specific time and subtract the market buyer volume by the market seller volume to get an imbalance, right? To get a difference, which is what we would call delta. Those imbalances allow us to identify a multitude of different things in the market that we're going to be breaking down throughout today's video. So we're going to be trading the S&P 500, right? We're going to be focused on the S&P 500 throughout this video, breaking down how delta and different forms of delta can be seen and used in this specific equity market. So there's a few different forms of delta that I do want to break down, but mainly what I'm going to be focused on today is going to be volume delta in the form of a volume profile. So a big portion of today's video is going to be looking at one specific chart here and the depth of market. So here on the screen, we have these two main charts that I want you guys to take a look at, right? The depth of market and the chart in the middle. So right over here and right over here, we're going to focus on this, but I want to break down that there are different types of delta charts. There are different forms of delta all in all. So first and foremost, right, we have a volume profile based delta, right? This is just a histogram based on delta over here that you guys can see. We also have the similar version here on the depth of market itself. These two are the same, and we're going to be using those mainly today. You can find delta in this form as well that differentiates between the buy and sell volume based on a histogram at the bottom of your chart. And you can also have a chart like this. This is a numbers bar chart that I'm going to be showing you right now. And this numbers bars chart, right, is like a footprint chart where you can break down different aspects of delta, right? You have the day delta, right, the cumulative delta, the ask volume minus the bid volume. You can have just general delta for the individual candle based on either a time period or Renko, whatever the case is, or you can have the difference in bars down here. These are all different forms of delta, but the main thing that they have in common is identifying where we have ask volume minus bid volume to give us some kind of imbalance to indicate something in price for us, right? So we'll look at all of these, but I want to mainly focus on what we have in terms of the histogram you find on this chart here, as well as on the depth of market that we have here, right? These are the two most important. So what is delta? How can we use it, right? What are aspects of delta that we have to understand? Right, so delta, you can see it's a very similar volume profile chart over here that allows us to identify where buy volume exceeds sell volume or where sell volume exceeds buy volume. Right, generally speaking, we understand that in the market, more buyers and sellers would suggest that prices do go up. right? And more sellers and buyers do suggest that prices do go down. However, with delta, what we can find is divergence criteria as well as absorption criteria to give us a better understanding of what it is that's actually going on in the overall picture. It's not enough to say, for example, you have very large negative delta, we're expecting price to go down, and large negative delta in the S&P could be considered like negative 1,000, for example, at a certain area. Like here you can see on this depth of market, we have large negative delta right into these lows. This isn't necessarily to say that price has to go down once these print, right? This is a large negative sell imbalance, but it's not necessarily the same as price having to drop, right? It's understanding what price is doing in these areas. So generally delta, if we focus on a histogram perspective, right, if it's at level by level, these areas act as support and resistance blocks, right? These support and resistance areas, it doesn't necessarily matter where price is, but it gives you a basic understanding of where there's key traders getting very active, creating imbalance in the market. So what I want to introduce is looking at the general quote unquote delta matrix that we can really break down as a guideline for us, right? So let's get rid of some of this and identify just a blank screen here. So a quote unquote delta matrix, right? To give us a better understanding of what's going on here. First and foremost, we would consider delta to be large in and around the 1,000 mark, right? 1,000 plus, anything above that, we have large delta, right? 900, 800, around 1,000 and anything larger. So if we split this up to, we'll go this side is positive delta. Let's assume that this level over here is positive 2,000 delta, right? And this area over here is negative 2,000 delta. So this is the negative side on this side. What this suggests is that if we go ask minus bid, right, market buyers versus market sellers, let's say that we have 4,000 market buyers at a certain level and 2,000 market sellers at a certain level, right? This would create a positive 2,000 delta. In this case, for example, we have 2,000 market buyers at a certain level and 4,000 market sellers at a certain level. This creates a negative 2,000 delta, right? So this is how they're created. Now, price can be either above the negative large delta or below the negative large delta. Price can be above the large positive delta or below the large positive delta. So what this would mean for us, right? Let's look at the negative side first. On the negative side, what we have in this circumstance is if price is above this very large negative delta, what happens in this region that pushes price above, and what happens when price pulls back into it? What had happened in this region is that a lot of traders were selling into this low, right? They were selling into this low, they were selling into this low, selling, but to no avail would price push down, and some buyers took advantage of that and bought back up, pressing prices higher. And this is what we would call a stuck trader, right? This large negative delta into lows becomes a stuck trader, which would suggest that there's weak-handed selling into this low, followed by some strong-handed buying that would save price and actually cause it to get pushed up. So these traders that are getting trapped on the sell side into the lows that cause price to push up allows traders to identify an area where we can have a buy stop run, right? A extension to the upside away from these stuck traders. Now, when price comes back into this large negative delta from above, these traders are known to be trapped, right? Trapped on the short side. And there is the expectation that prices will move up from that level back again if these traders are truly trapped, right? If they continuously add negative delta without allowing prices to drop through the level aggressively, what happens is the sell side has weak-handed sellers that will allow prices to reverse back to the upside, right? Eventually, if prices break through, what happens is these traders are no longer trapped and they're holding their downside momentum very well, and prices would be below this large negative delta. Prices below the large negative delta would suggest that these rallies and pops are getting sold very aggressively with real market sellers that are coming into these regions, and this would act as some kind of resistance zone for that downside leg in the delta. Now, it's a very similar concept over here where we have the positive delta. If we're above the positive delta, this suggests that there is a multitude of market buyers that are overwhelming the market sellers if we're holding it as support. And this would suggest that there is strong-handed buying into these areas, right? As long as they continuously buy into lows and prices get pushed up and pushed up and pushed up, what we have in that scenario is a large positive delta sustaining support. And just like the negative delta, if we break through and we hold at resistance, and every time we run up, they buy more and they get pressed down, this is suggestive that these guys are stuck on the long side and we can use this as a resistance zone, right? This is easily found here on the depth of market where we can see these actual larger orders in every single level of large negative or positive delta, right? So for example, we can have a visual construct of that on a chart that is representative of this kind of volume profile histogram over here. And what we had on this day, right? What we had on this trading day, we start off and prices pull down into this zone. As you'll see, you have a very large extended negative delta histogram, right? This was created by these sellers down into these areas. You can see there's multitudes of negative 1,000 plus, right? What this suggests is that every time we ran into it, sellers kept selling into lows, right? Which created this larger histogram block. They sell into the lows, they sell into the lows. And what transpires from that, you can see right here, is the failure to actually absorb into lows. And what we get from this is the start of a push to the upside, right? So these guys get trapped into lows. They can't move to the downside. They create this larger negative delta block over here. And what happens is price starts trickling up and buyers start stepping in, right? You can see these larger positive deltas, right? We get up to this top at a key resistance and things start shaping off, right? So you do have some larger positive delta at these tops, but nothing very concrete. We move back down, these larger negative deltas, they hold temporarily again, right? They're getting trapped and trapped, but at a certain point, someone says, you know what? I'm going to start buying really aggressively over here, right? You can see very large positive delta, 1,000, 1,000. And this creates this block over here, and they fail time again. And you can see on these rallies, you have larger negative delta, right? This is a divergence. When you have large negative delta like this on a rally and they keep getting stuck at the tops, meaning buying, but they keep failing, you're going to have this resistance zone, right? Push prices back down. And now we're somewhat struggling around these large negative deltas. You can see right here, very, very large negative delta print as prices start bottoming out, right? So right now, what has to happen that we're through and under this large negative delta, these guys should hold out the sell to look to push prices lower, right? So now that we're below those areas, these negative deltas are very happy. They're very pleased with what's going on. You can see right now, as we go up, the delta isn't very strong on these candles. And that's suggestive that the buy side, right, is struggling a little. So as long as prices remain under these levels, under these large deltas, right, you have that expectation to push lower. One of my favorite uses of delta in this histogram, in this depth of market, is finding trapped traders. When you have the massive culmination of all this delta clustering, right? Delta clustering suggestive of multiple areas that have around 1,000 delta, negative, positive, whatever the case is. When we have those areas and if it's negative into lows and they can't break, I love it for trap traders. If it's positive into highs, I love it for trap traders. Another use of this delta, this larger delta, if we take a look into these regions right here, right? So this was on the prior day, and you can see into these large delta blocks, right? Like this, these become good pullback areas to continue the trend, right? Especially if they're getting stuck. So I love pulling back into very large deltas, whether they're positive or negative, and they allow for traders to get trapped. Or right over here, right, you're selling into the 70, into the lows, or if you get them move back up, what happens is a very strong transition moment. So delta is a very, very useful tool in finding traders that are trapped, finding pullback regions, and very, very good in identifying where there's very large imbalances in price, right? Very large imbalance in price. There's also other delta aspects, right? When you're looking at other delta, you can look at the footprint, right? The numbers bar here that allows you to see cumulative delta on the session. One of the uses here on this is identifying the cumulative delta as prices drop or as prices rise, right? As cumulative delta, as prices drop and cumulative delta starts actually increasing, right? You have an increase in cumulative delta and they start actually rising from that area and cumulative delta stays heavy, you can anticipate the turning point in price, right? The moment that cumulative delta starts dropping very aggressively and price starts rallying, this is when you have a strong transition point, finding a low in the market and an expected move back up. It's the same thing to the downside. Once delta starts transitioning, right, from positive to negative and price are actually moving in that direction, you have that transition point, right? So for example, you can look at the delta that's cumulative at each one of these levels. So you have a very large delta block over here, right? Delta drops off very aggressively from the prior candle, right? This is suggestive that we're starting to near a low somewhere, right? Delta over here drops off on this nice positive candle. You can see right here from this candle, delta drops off, right? You're starting to find these areas. And when you get the transition point here, when they start rallying, and the delta starts sinking, you're getting the confidence that we have a turning point, right? I just want to introduce this one shortly here because there's a lot to it. Realistically, as a newer trader, as you're getting into delta and understanding delta more, I suggest that you start looking at delta based on a volume profile basis, right? Based on the depth of market itself, because it allows you to see delta, right? Ask volume minus bid volume at certain areas, right? At these certain areas, it allows you to see who's in control of the market at a specific level, which has a lot of importance in understanding what the next potential move looks like. Obviously, it's not a clear-cut signal or indicator to start buying or selling. It's best used with other tools, right? For example, the depth of market. But this allows you to see the momentum, the strength, and the weakness in terms of strong-handed, weak-handed traders in the market as you come into these certain levels, right? It's a very important aspect that I love combining with a volume profile. I love combining it with the depth of market. I can combine it with the volume profile, for example, if I have a key distribution ledge and we have a huge negative delta region down here, right? That allows us to find stuck traders potentially for that turning point in the market, right? So again, delta, as it comes down to use and learning this, identify where there's very big clusters of negative and positive delta that would identify stuck traders, right? And then use that in culmination with something else. For example, down here, right, we were just rotating in and around this 97, 98 area where you have this huge culmination of negative delta, right? Price refused to really drop down, and now we're trying to get this little rally to the upside, suggesting that these guys are very stuck, right? You have this very large negative delta movement right here at this specific candle where prices just bounced off that area. That's very suggestive that you're starting to see the turn, and you'd be targeting some of the key deltas at the top that have very large areas and would act as resistance points, right? So all in all, to summarize this, there's many different forms of delta. You can have delta on a level by level basis like we have here. You can have delta on a candle by candle time basis like we saw in the footprint. So I would suggest looking at these, right? Starting off with a level by level delta, that's something easier to understand, like on a volume profile, and then start looking at it on the footprint, which is a more complex instrument. So with that, right, this is how I like to use them in my strategy, how I can find levels based on delta, and you can find order flow levels and pivots based on delta, right? Just as I showed you guys here, stuck traders. And if we start moving through those stuck traders, there's a very strong possibility that the extension of the move just starts running, right? So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this, understood a lot about Delta. And if you have a lot of questions about this, please let me know down below, as we're going to be making more introductory videos like these so you can add to your trading strategy. So don't forget to smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment down below. And remember, we got a free futures course in the bio for you guys that covers order flow, distribution theory on our website. Absolutely free. Go check that out. So I'll see you guys next time. This is Victoria from TRADEPRO Academy.